Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. This is Irene's DIY Addiction and today I'll show you how to make adorable vintage looking sheep using paper clay and a null fleece coat. Mine has lots of holes in it.
I'll start with making wireframes, and I'm using sheep sketches to make them the right size. You can also use a photo of a sheep you like as a guide. The frames are very basic. You want to make 4 legs and a base for the head and the body. The standing sheep is the easiest one to make, and the lying one is a little more tricky as you need to bend the legs. These sheep look great in a group, so I'm going to make as many as 6 little sheep. The original base was made out of wood, but I think wireframe is much easier to make. You will also need papier-mâché or any other dough or clay to cover the frames. And here I've decided to save a little, and I'll be using homemade paper clay. I'm tearing an egg package into pieces into a bowl, filling the bowl with hot water, and waiting till the pieces dissolve and you get the paper pulp. You may want to speed up the process using a blender here. Then you want to squeeze the excess water out of the paper pulp. Add several teaspoons of white glue and mix thoroughly till you get soft dough. And finally, you want to cover the frames with this dough to make the sheep bodies, the heads and the upper parts of the legs. This dough has rough surface, although you may smooth it out a little using white glue, but I wouldn't use only this dough for the project. Nevertheless, it's perfectly fine for the base layer as it's going to be covered later. I'm saving the ready-made papier-mâché like this, and a little recycling is always a good idea, right? You want to apply it in a thin layer and let dry. After that, you want to cover the base with more white glue to ensure the good adherence and apply another layer. Keep adding the layers till you get the shape you like. I'm good with just 2 layers because my sheep are quite small. Applying in layers helps paper dough dry quicker and ensures you have no cracks as this dough shrinks when drying. I'm using the ready-made dough for the final layer. For shaping the head, I'm making 2 lines along the sheep face, going from its eyes to the nose. And I'm pressing the dough under these lines to make the face look slim. Then I'm shaping the mouth and the nostrils. And I'm making the eyes. I'm using glass toy eyes here, just pressing them into the dough, but you may also want to just make the eye sockets and draw the eyes later. Here you want to keep in mind that the sheep's eyes are situated on the sides of the face, not on the front. Finally, I'm making the ears by shaping pointed little pieces of dough like leaves and attaching them to the head just behind the eyes. After the face is finished, I'm also making the lower leg parts. I'm just covering the frame with the dough and making hooves on the edges. This shape is actually very simple. When shaping your own ones, you may want to use antique toy sheep photos as a guide, and if you Google antique toy sheep, you'll see that some of them are even simpler than those that I'm making. And of course, you can also use any homemade dough or clay as a base here. I have a video with homemade DIY recipes, and you may want to use a homemade paper clay recipe, which I've posted there. I'll link this video down below. It takes a while to prepare, but it's much cheaper than any ready-made papier-mâché dough. This is especially important if you want to make a bigger toy. After the sheep bases are finished, you want to paint the faces and the legs. I'm using an ivory acrylic paint to keep up with the antique look, and you may want to apply a couple of layers till you have a nice and even shade. After that, I'm painting the hooves black. You may also want to add thin lines just over the eyes to accentuate them, or draw the eyes if you've decided not to use glass eyes. And I'm drawing the mouth and the nostrils red. You may also want to distress the paint by sanding it off in places, but I've decided not to do this. After everything is dry, I'm sealing the faces and the legs using a satin sealer. You want just a little gloss here, but not too much. And now it's time to cover the sheep with fur. You may want to use artificial fleece or even spun cotton here, and I want to keep it closer to the original. Originally, these toys were covered with real sheep fleece, so I'll be using an old sheep fleece coat. I'm cutting out the trial piece. I think the size is fine. I'll link the pattern down below. It's very approximate and you want to shorten or lengthen it if needed, and I'll also cut it to size for each sheep, but it works as a guide. So I'm covering the middle part of the skin with glue first and attaching it to the head and the back. You can use any glue which works for leather or fabric, depending on what you use for the skin. Next, I'm attaching the breast part. Be sure the two edges of the skin here meet in the middle with no overlap. And I'm doing the same thing on the tummy. You may want to cut the skin to size to ensure the good fit. The T-shaped cuts on the tummy work the best for that purpose. And finally, I'm cutting off the excess and covering the upper parts of the legs. To be sure the toy looks nice with no leather or fabric edges visible, I'm attaching a little glue along the edge of the skin and gluing the fleece to the exposed legs and the face parts. It makes the nice and neat edging. You may also glue little pieces of fleece or even just the fur if there are bald areas anywhere. If the fleece is too long, you may also want to make the sheep a haircut here. It's a little trickier to cover the lying sheep because of the bent legs, but cutting the skin here and there helps a lot. Because of fur, the cuts are not visible at all, so thanks to the fur, you end up with flawless cover anyway. The final thing to do is to attach the bells. I'm using little brass jingle bells and thin velvet ribbons stained with instant coffee to look older. You may want to either sew or glue the collar to the sheep. And I love how the sheep turned out. They are adorable, and what I love the most, they really look as if they are vintage toys. You can make the sheep in a variety of sizes. The technique I've shown works for bigger toys as well, and you may want to place such a sheep onto a cart to make a pull toy, or make a little carriage for a sheep and load it with Easter eggs to make the cutest Easter decor ever.
Well, I hope you liked today's project. These sheep were super popular in the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. And you may have heard about them in the very famous song Mary Had a Little Lamb. So I hope these sheep will decorate your home for spring. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you in my next one. Bye!